But I'm not talking about it solo, now am I? I'm not talking about como agua ora chocolate by myself. On this episode of the Culture Cast, we're just going to get right into it. I am joined by my two good friends who have not been on an episode together, but they've been on this show plenty of times, all the way from 80s TV Ladies, a show that you can check out on the Weirding Way Media Network. Susan Lambert Hatem.
Hello. Happy to be back.
And all the way from Astounding Tales of the Public Domain, Midnight Viewing, Noise Junkies, Goodnight, Mr. Walters. I could keep going. And
you could, actually. I don't want you to, though.
That's fair. Your friend and mine, Father Malone.
Something in Spanish. Yeah.
C, as they would say.
Of a theme.
And on this episode of the Culture Cast, we are continuing Spanish Language Film Month with a look at 1992's adaptation of a Laura Esquivel novel, Like Water for Chocolate.
In Tita's kitchen, ordinary spices become a recipe for passion in the magical movie critics are falling in love with, Like Water for Chocolate. An instant classic, erotic and delectable, scrumptious, sensual, and visually alluring. 2 thumbs up, way up. Prepare for a treat. The extraordinary new film by acclaimed director Alfonso Arau, Like Water for Chocolate, rated R. Now playing at select theaters.
So the film is directed by Alfonso Arau, and it stars Marco Leonardi, oh my God, I'm going to butcher all these. I do perfect with him.
Lumi Cavazos.
Lumi Cavazos, Regina Tomei, and Ada Carrascos. And the film is all about Lumi Cavazos' Tita, who plays a woman who is a slave to the whims of culture in the early 1900s in Mexico, where she is forced to take care of her mother because she's the youngest, and that's the way it works. Don't you know? Tough shit, as they would say. And the movie chronicles her life as told to us by a narrator in sort of present day. Maybe present, who knows, but in the future. So it's told in VO through flashback, but it is all about this character's great aunt. So Susan, I'm going to kick it to you first. When was the first time you saw this? I know you mentioned to us before that you've read the book. So let me know all about your thoughts when you saw it now and when you saw it then about Like Water for Chocolate.
Well, here's the funny thing. I realized in rewatching it that I never saw it. I saw part of it on cable, but I never saw the whole thing. But I did read the book. So I'm going to start with, I do remember reading the book, which in some ways, I think having seen like a few clips of the movie, I figured I just saw it. Like, although they're very different. They're very different, the book and the movie. But I just assumed I had seen it before. But as I were watching it, I'm like, I don't think I ever saw this whole thing because I just didn't remember so many things. And it's hard to remember movies you saw in the 90s. I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes but as soon as I start watching them, I'm like, oh, I remember that. And I remember that. I don't remember enough of this movie to know that I watched the whole thing. I think I only watched, caught part of it on cable. So.
What did you think watching it now?
Oh, well, I have a lot of thoughts, but my top ones are these. Almost all I was thinking about during the very beginning of this movie was, okay, when was this in Miramax history? Because this was sort of at the height of Miramax or the rise of Miramax. And so it had a lot of those Miramax elements to it. It was shot beautifully, just absolutely gorgeous. A lot of naked ladies, a lot of titties. And I don't know what I'm allowed to say on this, but
I just want to point out you said titties before either one of us did. So
I know. I figured I'd jump right in. I'd get ahead of the game.
Yeah, we weren't going to until you did. So thank you.
Yeah. The dam has been broken. Susan said titties.
I thought I'd get ahead of the crying game. No, I'm making a little Miramax joke there. Okay. For all you kids out there. And beautiful acting, beautiful directing. It's not a great adaptation, if you ask me, but that's my top level. But it's like kind of a gorgeous poetry of a film.
Father Malone, what about you? I know you're a fan of 90s indie films and films about movies films about food because we're going to be talking about a film about food later this year. And this movie could have slotted in there actually later in the year, but tell me a little bit about your thoughts of Like Water for Chocolate.
I have a very long history with this movie. In 1992, or actually 93 when this was released in the United States, I was a projectionist at a movie theater in Santa Monica. and Miramax booked us as their limited engagement for the movie. So the movie came out in May of 93, but we got it in February. And we sold out every show for months and months and months. And Miramax quickly figured out that not only was it doing very well at our theater, but it's mostly industry people coming to our theater. So they four-walled us with Like Water for Chocolate for a full year. I have seen this movie, I don't know how many times. Too many times. I will say I have seen, particularly because as a projectionist, I've got other duties to do other than just watching the movie. But I've seen the scene with Gertrudis in the shower 1 billion times. And I'm not going to apologize for that. I was 20 years old. So, I have not seen it since then because I had seen it too often. I will say at the time, I had a little cat who never left my kitchen. So she was named Tita at the same time that this movie was playing in my theater. Anyway, have not seen it since. I was telling Chris off air, I didn't realize we were recording today until 10 p.m. last night and immediately put the movie on. And I watched about 5 minutes of it and went, nope, I've got it. So it's sort of the same 90s amnesia you're mentioning where like, it all flooded back. I went, okay, got it. No, I don't need to. That's all my preparation I need because once again, Chris, I've seen this movie too much, but I love it. It never grated on me that it was playing as long as it did. That was Enchanted April, which also played for a full year. That was good for 3 months. But Like Water for Chocolate, I never got old of, or I never got sick of. So I was happy to re-experience it here, even as briefly visually as it was. It's all still locked in my noodle.
So I have not seen it before. I had not read the book, but again, it was a standout in a lot of lists of Spanish language films worth talking about. So sitting down to watch it, it's not the kind of movie that I would go out of my way to watch. It's not something that I'm not talking about the subject material. I'm just talking about the kind of movie that this is. This is a very specific kind of movie that was made in the 90s that they're not making these anymore because they kind of made them already. They've made enough of them that the ones that exist are still good, still worth checking out, but nobody's making them now for a multitude of reasons. And I mean, maybe it's less they're not making them now, but the art form has kind of transitioned into something else that's less recognizable. But this movie, I think it reminded me of Heavenly Creatures if Heavenly Creatures wasn't as engaging as Heavenly Creatures is. I just wasn't as engaged with this movie as I was hoping I would be. And I think it's because, like you mentioned, Susan, this feels very much like an idea that works better as a book than it ever would as a kind of like No Country for Old Men. Little bit ironic that, Cormac McCarthy passed away today, or, I'm mentioning Country for Old Men, but that movie has a similar weird thing where I understand, because having read the book, the way the narrative progresses makes a lot more sense in a literary sense, but there are parts of this that there's supposed to be time jumps that are very hard to not understand, but there's one towards the end of the movie that's almost unforgivable in the way that it's used. And then the expectation of the audience to interpret what's going on without them kind of explicitly saying it. But all of the kind of the narrative choices aside, the acting is what you're here for. And Lumi Cavazos is fantastic, and she carries the movie completely. But again, there's parts of this movie that seem a little wheel spinning to me. And it's an hour and 45 minutes. And then the director's cut is even longer than that. It's 143 minutes. But I didn't walk away from it thinking I needed more. I think it needed some clarification on the storytelling devices that they're using, because there is magical realism, but there's not it's almost that there's not enough, or they're not. I don't know how to explain. It's not that there's not enough, but the movie kind of doesn't make a big enough point about some of the things that happen to kind of like reinforce what's going on. You're just supposed to interpret it as the audience, which is perfectly fine, but I just wish there was more of it. Maybe that's just me.
Well, that's interesting, because I think in some ways the first half of the movie is very different from the second half of the movie. And I think I did watch the extended cut. I didn't realize there were two, because I definitely watched the one that was like 140 something. And the first half of the movie is taking a lot of time. It's very sort of indie movie, and very, like there's a lot of time, even though you're jumping through their lives. There's a lot with the food, and establishing that how she feels when she's making the food basically, affects literally how people ingest it and what it does to them after they have eaten her food. And so that's such a beautiful, and that's very much of the book, obviously. There's a recipe in every chapter of the book. Now, again, I wanted to find the book. It's one of those books that sort of stayed with me, which is why I kept it. I haven't kept every book I've ever owned or read. A lot of them, but not everyone. But that one I kept because it was the beauty of the book itself was really neat. Like, there was a recipe in every chapter that started every chapter. And this is what I remember, because I couldn't find it. And then it almost felt like, I think it was like every month in her, like it sort of jumped through time as well. And so that would be a hard book to adapt. So I'm not saying that the adaptation is good or bad or indifferent, really, except that it's just so different from the book in terms of just style, right? Like just in terms of how would you take this book that's so episodic and yet also so specifically magical realism around food and recipe. And then the back half of the movie kind of felt like it left a lot of that part of the magical realism behind and became like a little bit of like the ghost of the mom and, kind of haunting her. And it became a different kind of magical realism in the movie that I think didn't really match. The food left the metaphor of the movie, and the engulfed in fire became the metaphor. The matchbook metaphor came that we get about halfway through the movie came to the front. Anyway, that was sort of just sort of struck me. I was like, oh, well, I think we sort of lost the magical realism threads that you kind of want to pay off more.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, all of the magical realism in this movie is predicated on the food. So why does it drop out in the final? Like, it doesn't really pay off in the book either, honestly, the food sort of thing. I mean, you're still getting recipes in the final chapters, but Tita's not really using her powers for anything. By then, she's just accepted her fate as the little matchstick girl, basically. This is interesting. And she, it starts with her with the pregnancy of tears. You know what I mean? Like, she's just fated to be this person, and the book and the film kind of both embrace that, but it abandons what was so delightful about the movie for so long. It's such a great concept that whatever emotion you're feeling, you're putting into your food, and then whoever ingests it is going to feel that emotion. They could have come up with something clever for her to do with it at the end. I don't know, just some last thing, but.
And again, I'm going to say, I'm going to shout out the cast, because she's phenomenal. She's just magnetic, right? Like, you're just like, I'll watch her. I want her to be okay. I want to watch her bake food and pine. But it's so challenging to look at all these movies now in the light of, for me as a woman who was, I was just finishing grad school. I think that's one of the reasons I may have missed it, as I was in my last sort of semester, I think, when this movie came out of grad school. So I was a little inundated with the film I was making at the time, the short film. And so I missed this, but as a person who then went into the movie industry in the 90s, at a time when Miramax was like the greatest independent filmmaker, distributor, film company that everybody wanted to work with, and everybody, was just starting to win everything, box office and awards. And now that basically the head of that company was raping women at that time. And so it's really hard, I will say, looking back at this film, to not be when there's these just gorgeous, beautiful shots of naked women and then scenes of women being raped and scenes of women going crazy, and so they rip off all their clothes and they're huddled in the top of the chicken barn. I'm not quite sure where she was, and you're like, really? Didn't she? So she couldn't have her she's knitting the other thing that she's doing is sort of knitting that amazing blanket that stays with her and gets bigger and bigger, right? And she didn't keep that she didn't drag that up with her. Like, no, because we had to have women who have lost their minds over their grief naked in the straw.
There's a lot of nudity in this movie. And yeah, coupling that with and look, I think Father Malone, you and I talked about this when we did the Confess Fletch episode. That was a Miramax movie too. And I think we said essentially what you said, Susan, which is like, I get that this movie came out in 1992, or 3, whatever, in the 90s. So can't do anything about it then. But like, I don't want to fucking see it anymore. Like, it holds no fucking cachet for anybody. Like, and if it does, yeah, like
the logo or the nudity. Listen,
no, the logo, the nudity's fine. I'm talking about the logo. Yeah. I don't want to see the Miramax logo in front of things like contemporary stuff, like that Fletch movie. Like, it was in the front of that. It's like, who the fuck wants to see this? Like, we know what was going on. Why this company is where it is because one person was abusing. And yeah, it kind of makes all these indie movies featuring female cast coming from Miramax all feels kind of icky and just like I'm good with leaving this in the past. Like, I that sounds terrible, but you got to distance the industry from this somehow.
Well, and there's an interesting thing. So there's a book that recently dropped that is called Burn It Down, about abuse in Hollywood, not quite sexual abuse. I haven't read it yet. There was a Vanity Fair article, but we have it. And so abuse in Hollywood is still happening, right? So, right. However, it is getting called out faster, right? But it, and it was going on before the 90s, right? Like, I was a huge John Ford fan. I grew up on, watching the Westerns on television and watching all those kind of stunningly beautiful, like, Westerns and the Billy Wilder movies and stuff like that. And I'm not going to speak of Billy Wilder, but then you read about John Ford, and he's a jerk. He's terrible, particularly to actresses. Now, I don't know that he was raping any of them, but he was abusing them. And you're like, God, but how can you make the movies have such humanity that he made in them and be terrible, be a terrible person, and be a beautiful artist? Like, that is the conundrum of Hollywood, of all art, right? Like, that we know, it's not just films and TV, and yet, and so there's a certain thing of like, well, there's the art and there's the artist, and yet I think there are artists, or I don't know that we'd even call Harvey Weinstein an artist. We'd call him a producer of a lot of movies and a distributor with a good eye. A distributor
mainly, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the abuse is so egregious, right? And like to the level of a serial rapist, right? That's what was going on. So it is really hard now to look at any of these movies and not be just physically worried about the people on screen and what they put up with to be there. And then just the extra creep factor now of like, oh, I'm not just watching a movie where we're saying that the female body is beautiful, because it is, and that the male body is beautiful. And there's male nudity at the end of the film. And
very brief male nudity.
and it's also no fun, right? Like, it's not for fun.
Flaccid dicks are no fun. Like, I just, like, I get that there's not an analog, but like, a flaccid dick never did anything for anybody. Like,
they weren't getting an R rating with a stiff cock on screen. Sorry.
that needs to be a tagline. They're not getting an R rating with a stiff cock. They're not. But it's also, like you said, it's not exciting. Like, it's just.
This was also the 90s, remember? So,
Yeah. Right. And literally the year after The Crying Game came out, which is kind of, I don't know if that was the first major distributed movie that. Certainly the first that was on my radar, but Yeah. Anyway, so which was also Miramax, but I think it's hard. It's really hard not to watch these movies now and not have that for me. However, that said, the movie itself was so, in some ways, that quintessential 90s movie that was a foreign-made movie, and the rise of independent film that would cross over to other countries, and particularly the United States, which I would say up until the 80s and 90s had a lock on filmmaking around the world that would be considered globally influential, right? That there was, and that was the thing that Miramax did, was bring all these amazing foreign filmmakers to American society. And I think I appreciate that. I'm going to distribute these foreign films that otherwise would not be known in the United States is the good legacy of Miramax.
That's what I liked about Miramax at the time. Once they started full on producing films and were basically purchased by Disney anyway, I was always like, why do you guys keep saying you're an independent? You're owned by fucking Disney. Like this, I appreciate the product you're giving us, but you have no place at the Independent Spirit Awards. Get out of here.
No, and no place at Sundance after that. And yet Sundance is now kind of all of that. It's just the pipeline to the studios by the studios that are already have already selected half of their product before Sundance. So it's a different time, but it was a very exciting time for indie filmmaking when this film came out. It did feel possible coming out of grad school at the time, coming out of USC Film School, that at least there was some path being kind of hacked potentially for independent film, and yet it very quickly, I think, got subsumed. Was that the right word? Got absorbed.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing about this movie is there's both the food and then there's the family drama. I think, and that's happening also in Joy Luck Club. Like we were starting to see sort of female family dramas that were really digging into stuff, often based on books, right? Written where the books were written by women. The films would be often not made by women, right? So it's a male
more
gaze
often than not. Yeah.
Yes, it's a male gaze on a female written work, a base, like the core, the novel. And that's just interesting when you're like, well, what would it look like to adapt this novel now?
It wouldn't be a movie. I mean, again,
it would be a 12 series with a recipe at the end.
Yeah, like it would be very different because, again, I know that I don't think that this is going to strike anybody as surprising, but I mean, cinema in a lot of ways is not the best place to adapt long form stories of any kind. Like there's not enough time. I mean, there's not enough time to do everything right. And even, Laura Esquivel she adapted her own book. This is her script. I mean, she wrote the script for the movie. So at least, like, to your point, Susan, it's directed by a male director, but at least the script is adapted. She adapted her own work, which makes me question some of the decisions that were made, I think, even more, because you have an opportunity to kind of maybe correct the problems of your narrative, of your story that you wrote in a cinematic version. And yeah, I mean, when you have time jumps, you have credits on the screen or title cards on the screen showing like Rio Grande, Texas and stuff, but then the time jumps happen without them. And it's
and
it's like, guys, like there's this story is kind of a complicated narrative as it is. Cause like we've mentioned, there's magical realism with food. There's these kind of deep seated familial problems that are being worked through. There are 3 female characters that are almost in a lot of ways not even characters, but almost stand-ins for specific kinds of people or expectations within the culture. Tita, Rosaura, and that one. All 3 of them are representative of 3 different kinds of women in that society. So it's, again, like there's a lot going on, and for as much as there is going on, it is a engaging story. I just feel like it would be a TV show now with like a mini series. Like it would be a 10-parter, like you said, Father Malone, or 12, like something to that effect. And it would be, I think the magical realism would be there throughout, because I think that's the most interesting thing about this, because otherwise it's just another movie from the 90s that's an indie movie. The things that it does that are interesting are the things that it kind of doesn't have any interest in doing later in the movie for whatever reason. I prefer literally for whatever reason, because she's still cooking, she's still doing all the things that she's been doing throughout the movie, and then we get to, the last 20 minutes and the movie just feels like it, Wile E. Coyote drops off a cliff and plummets down. And it's like, we're done. It's over. Whoa. The ending of this movie reminded me a lot of Ragtime. It's like, the plane's coming in for a landing here. And then we just cut the power completely and plummet to the ground. It's like, wait a second.
Well, there's a lot. And again, I don't because movies are obviously shot out of sequence, but it almost feels like, again, they just literally ran out of time. Right. This is what happened in film school. Like, you just run out of time to finish the back, third of your film, because you spend so much time on the first part of it, and then you're like, oh, well, it's due. I got to turn it in. And
let's just light her on fire. Can we just light the whole place on fire? That's an ending.
Yeah, it is an ending. And that is what happens in the book. But I've got to assume in the book, it's much more well-earned than it is here. Well,
because the book's not trying to track too much, right? Like, the book is so episodic, right, that it's not as, I think there was definitely an attempt. And again, I don't remember the book super closely, but it's more like, here's a chapter. And you're telling this overarching story, but you're just telling these events. And I think the movie wanted to do a more traditional narrative structure. And that's a challenge. I don't think you could do it better now because you have more tools for telling that type of story in an unusual way, given, the sort of the sophistication in storytelling that has happened for audiences since the 90s, right? You don't need to spend lots of time on beautiful shots, though they're nice to have. You can actually make a non-linear narrative now, and audiences will be with you even if you're jumping around. At that time, I think they didn't quite know exactly how to pull that off, because there weren't a lot of that happening, and they were so concerned with doing both. Like, okay, we have to jump through time because we have to hit all these things that are in the book, but we also are trying to. It's a pretty traditional storytelling for a story that doesn't technically need to be told in a traditional way. Right? They start that movie off
flashback.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not saying it's told in VO and flashback, but they sort of don't use the narrator that well.
No, and that's why the book, even though it's more episodic than the film, feels more personal, because you have the same voice guiding you chapter to chapter. Whereas here we get the narrator for 10 seconds, and then she pops in when it's kind of necessary, where they feel like they haven't papered over these gaps between episodes. And yeah, it's actually more of a distraction.
Yeah. Right. I think it would be an interesting TV series, like limited series, and because you could basically treat it like chapters. And again, I think we as audiences have a more sophisticated an ability to make the leaps that I'm not sure audiences had in the 90s, just consistently, like in their pockets. Like we've jumped through time and space with every friggin' Marvel movie that's like, oh, okay, this is got it. I got it. She's doing this and she's doing that. And then now we're here, and just give it to me and let's move on.
Right.
And yet then take time with the characters and the magical realism and the relationships and developing that, because that is, again, when you talk about the strength of the actors, you're talking about, okay, well, all right. So mom had 3 daughters, the last one born early, immediately, and in a sea of tears that literally created a bag of salt.
Took them forever to use it all.
You took them, yeah, and I kept hoping that would come back a little bit.
Me too.
That they're using the salt, she's using the salt that dried out from where she was born.
The last meal she made should have been the last grain of salt.
Yes. And
Monday morning quarterback, y'all.
I know. We know how to do it. We got it all worked out. We're good.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's very interesting is you do want to spend more time with those relationships. It's like, okay. And so then there are these 3 sisters. The middle, again, we find out with basically one line that the middle child is probably, and then we learned out definitely, basically the child of an affair with a mixed race person, and which we never meet other than in a picture. Like, am I like?
Right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And
for a movie that the movie expects you to have read the book is almost what it feels like. Because there are things that, like, the dad dies when he learns about that. And it just has him go, he grabs his arm in his chest, and then it's just cuts to a guy blowing out a candle and he's dead. It's like,
and we're at a funeral.
Yeah. It's like, whoa.
Oh, I loved that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind. I'm not
read the book. I just saw this as like, here we are. We're getting to the family. I do want to say Laura Esquivel's screenplay based on that book is actually a fantastic adaptation. It was her first screenplay, obviously. I agree with you. However, Susan, she was maybe not the best person to adapt. It's often authors of prose when it comes to the screenplay, like they don't get what was important in the book sometimes. I'm not saying that happened here, but there were evidently problems with the screenplay we're talking about here as far as the adaptation. But putting it into sort of a traditional narrative like they did, it mostly worked. Like, I didn't have a problem with those early scenes with, we only get one shot of the dad because he finds out and keels over, I liked that. I thought it was economical and slightly amusing.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing. There was a little bit of a tone thing, because that was an interesting tone, and it had touches of that, but not really. It then got very dark and stayed dark, and only the older sister, right, who is the one that goes off with the bandito, right? Like
that's the middle sister.
That's the middle sister. Yeah. Okay, but so I don't understand. So now I'm confused. The oldest sister. So the middle sister is the one from the affair.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
The one who runs off with the revolution.
The one who runs off with the revolutionary. Okay. And then the older sister is the one who ends up marrying her love, right? And then dying of flatulence.
Which is the funniest scene in the movie.
And again, you kind of it's nice that they give you a chance to hate her again, because she's going to do to her only daughter what the mom did to,
right. She was gearing up, fucking ready to go too. She's like, I don't care, I'm gonna do it.
And
and what's
She's
funny
ready to inherit Elena's mantle, which is horrifying.
But it's horrifying, but I love that they have that. It's such a smart character to have in there, right? The character that, again, hasn't learned anything because there was nothing for her to learn, because she had none of this put on her at any point. She got what she wanted and then got what someone else wanted too. And I love that. I love this narrative. I just wish, I know that I'm saying there wish there was more of it. I just wish there was more of certain things that would be there in another way of telling this story. Because that relationship between Tita and Rosaura, I think is the most interesting relationship of the movie, at least the one that, ends up kind of carrying the second half of the movie. The Gertrudis relationship ends up never really being touched back on. She disappears, comes back for like 10 minutes, and then disappears again. And it works for what her character is. I just wish there had been more of her at the beginning too, so we could understand why she fucked off as hard as she did. We understand because of the mom treating Tita that way, but again, like, I would have liked to have just seen more of it, because I think the beginning of this movie is way more entertaining than the last half.
And because for a minute, and I feel like this was more in the book, and I think that's what a novel can do, that even a little bit in a novel about sort of those characters, they can be the antagonist, but they can still have a little bit more humanity than you get in the movie version of this. And so it is a little bit like, okay, how are these sisters all from the same family, right? And grew up with literally the exact same context, and yet they have wildly different, not just personalities, but literally outlooks on life,
right.
and so and yet they never communicate any of that to each other. There's never you did this to me and I did this to you, and the way that, I don't know, sisters often talk to each other, even when they don't like each other. And so you never get this movie may not actually pack pass the Bechdel test. There's not a lot of, even though it's all women, they don't really talk about anything.
Right.
Sometimes they talk about food.
They do talk about food. You're right.
Cream fritters, everybody, and that's it.
Thought I wasn't going to have to watch this movie ever again.
You pulled it out. But they don't really talk about themselves. They don't go, here's what I need. We know that the middle sister supports Tita, but we don't know why they hate older sister until she just sort of marries the guy that she knows is in love with Tita, and she doesn't seem to care. But we don't even get that in the movie because, and I'm going to say that even though that even though it's based on the book and she did the adaptation, I think that was also probably an adaptation that was shepherded by not only the director, who's great, and who was her husband at the time. It's also, again, informed by a lot of notes. You definitely, studios, even independent studios, even foreign studios, were giving a lot of notes, and particularly depending on when Miramax was involved. And they just distributed this. They didn't produce this. Yeah.
No, they just picked it up after it was completed. Yeah.
But they probably did a cut on it. That's what would be my guess, but I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, there is a USA cut and a Mexico cut. So there are two different cuts of the movie.
Is the longer one the Mexico cut?
Yeah, the American cut is 1 hour and 45 minutes, and then the Mexican cut is 2 hours and 3 minutes.
Okay.
I think in the Mexican one, the death of the mother doesn't happen immediately. She takes care of the mother as she dies, which is like, again, like, I mean, the father thing is one thing. And I mean, it's abrupt, but they handle it rather well by making it kind of like stylistically abrupt. The way the mom dies, just like for a character that's as big as that character has been, and the influence of the mother on the other characters in the film, she's kind of killed off with no, I mean, again, it just happens. I mean, which again, if that's the point of the movie, I get it.
But she's the antagonist of the film, so she really should have a better send-off.
As opposed to just like pushed off of a cliff.
She's not gone.
No, she's not gone. But even if she's coming back, because that's where the film starts being abrupt, and maybe is that cut. So I did not see that cut. I saw the hour 45 cut.
Yeah.
I watched the hour and 45 cut a lot.
Is that yes?
Yeah, I don't think I've honestly seen the director's cut because I only ever saw it at the theater, and I never watched it at home ever.
I'm going to guess that some of our problems with the back end were probably solved by that 2 hour cut.
Correct. Well, we're here reviewing the US cut. That's true. No, it's cool. And listen, I got to tell you, I'm a little jealous of you being in the projection booth watching this movie. I can totally see in the early 90s, how that would have been just a magical experience. Oh yeah, it was wonderful. It was consistently, it was the New Wilshire Theater in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And we were a 2-screen house. So we would consistently have a Miramax film booked on one theater and then calendar for the other theater. And oh my God, what a wonderful time to be to be in an independent movie theater house, seeing all the independents, like good, bad, and indifferent. It was pretty great.
Yeah. I mean, and that was sort of the saving grace of trying to be in film school in the late 80s and early 90s was the independent film house, because otherwise you couldn't see anything, right? Like there wasn't, it was so hard. Like, and it's so weird because now it's like, oh, you want to watch a movie? You can pull up the movie, the foreign cut, the director's cut, the script, the first draft of that script.
I know. Everyone's so spoiled. We couldn't get anything. We would have to look at the television listings, scan the movies. Like, oh God, okay, so Thursday night, either set the VCR or set my alarm for this particular flick. The New Wilshire, it used to be a vaudeville house initially, so there was still a fly space behind the screens where Landmark Theater kept their catalog of films that they owned that they distributed to their calendar houses. So as a key holding member of that building, I would go in early every morning and watch all of the classic movies that they had access to. It was amazing.
Okay, that is amazing. That is amazing. And because because movie theaters were sort of the church of the film lover.
100%. Yeah.
And so wow, that's pretty fantastic.
It was a film school experience, just all on my own.
Yeah. Getting to see, like, I remember the effort it took. So in high school, I started being interested in filmmaking, right? Like I made Super 8 films with my friend, and then by senior year, I was like, I want to go to film school. There were 3 in the country. There was USC and California, UCLA and California, and NYU had a film program. Those were the only 3 film programs in the country where it wasn't a program. There were smaller, like, you can kind of do a side, like you could do take 6 classes, and then there would be film classes at certain places. But those were the only film programs in the country at the time that I started to get interested, and I decided I wanted. And so I applied to all 3 of them, but I kind of pulled my UCLA one because basically if you're an out-of-state applicant at that point, they were also like, you're never going to get in and we hate you and you're going to pay not only full price, but like extra. And a
very similar experience.
And so I ended up going to USC, but that senior year of high school, I was suddenly like, I have to consume films, right? I want to study film, so I better watch films. And so I remember I had read about Citizen Kane, and Citizen Kane was playing in downtown Atlanta. I was from Georgia, and I was living in the suburbs, Decatur. And I was like, I got to go see this film downtown. And I was like 17. And my mom's like, well, you're not driving downtown by yourself, so you can't go unless you get somebody to go with you. And so I was calling all my friends, trying to convince them to go see The Wine Guy in a black and white movie. That was the greatest movie of all time, but I couldn't really explain it to them. Oddly enough, no one took me up on it.
Oh my God. You went anyway, right?
No. So I'm like, literally, I'm out of time. My last one is Scott Rogers. He's got to go with me. I'm like, Scott, you got to go with me. I can't go with somebody. And he's like, call Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Lloyd was our English teacher, our AP English teacher. And I was like, I can't call Mr. Lloyd. And he's like, no, call Mr. Lloyd. He'll go with you. I'm like, go with me to the movie. And he's like, call him. So I called up Mr. Lloyd, and I was like, Mr. Lloyd, there's this movie and I really should see it. And it's playing downtown at the One Art Theater in Atlanta, and the thing, and it's Citizen Kane. He's like, oh, Susan, you must see that movie. Cause he knew I liked film. Like, okay. And he picked me up in a station wagon and we drove to downtown. I said, I'm going with Mr. Lloyd, Mom. Now this would be a creepy story.
With all the trappings.
Yeah,
it has all the trappings.
You stopped short of the creepy part, I feel like.
Because there was no creepy part.
Because it's a wonderful story.
What a time to be alive.
Wonderful story in that my AP English teacher went out of his way to drive me and to drive with me to downtown Atlanta, explaining on the way that I probably wouldn't understand or like Citizen Kane the first time I viewed it, but I had to view it 3 times before I made a judgment on it. This is an English teacher, right? And
that's a hero.
We watched the movie. He drove me home. Absolutely nothing creepy happened. The next day in class, he brought me a book. He gave me a book called Teaching English in the Motion Picture, which had an entire chapter on Citizen Kane. And then ultimately wrote the best recommendation letter ever, one of my 3 recommendation letters for film school. And I kept that letter for about 20 years. And every time I felt bad about myself, I would pull out Mr. Lloyd's recommendation of me for college and be very thrilled. I also used it as how I wrote recommendation letters for other people later. That's what it took to see a movie you wanted to see.
You spoiled brats out there, your YouTubes and your... God damn it, well.
Probably listening to this on a phone right now. Back in my day.
That you could make a movie on.
Yeah. You could watch this movie on YouTube.
You could make a movie on YouTube and then put it on YouTube and then watch it within a day.
The insanity of it all.
But back to water for China.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm sorry. I just had to get that out because I'm so that the art house movie theater made it possible for people to study movies. And And now anybody can study movies, which is great. And we get now a whole new, generations. I think access is better, but like the old vaudeville, like the theater people who remember vaudeville, the film people who remember the independent movie theater, that is just such a special palace and sacred place for loving movies that I am also very jealous that you did that. I was never a projectionist except for a couple of times at USC, just in necessary times.
Certainly, yeah. Yeah, it was, I wouldn't trade it for anything, the experience of showing fantastic movies to throngs of people and, and educating myself all along the way with them, And this movie in particular, like as long as it seemed that it stayed there, just squatting on screen. It's cinema number one. It's still one of my favorites of all time. I recognize all the problems with it now that we're all discussing it in sort of a critical analysis way, but still love all of these actors. The problem is that we don't get enough of them, I think, ultimately. Because they end up just sort of representing the different themes, which is the sort of railing against tradition, which, I mean, it can't be more explicit than Gertrudis, who actually joins the Mexican Revolution, which is going on at the time. So,
And I love rides off naked on a horse with the revolutionary and comes back dressed as with her, like, bandoleros, whatever those are called, with the bullets on them. And I'm like that, as a metaphor, it was pretty crazy.
It's pretty spectacular.
and that for me, I think is, again, if you look at it as less characters and more just ways to talk about these things, I think that works. But again, that's why I come back to the idea of like this ultimately, I think it is better suited as a book in a lot of ways. Like, again, if you're not going to read the book, I understand why this exists. There needs to be a visual medium version of this because the book was pretty important. The movie comes out and it's the highest grossing foreign language film at the time in the States. So I understand why, but yeah, it's not that the characters are flat. It's just that the characters feel less like characters and more stand-ins for things and ideas. And because they never talk to one another, it almost feels that they're compartmentalized that way too. And their interactions don't kind of meet. Their interactions are kind of just in separate lanes. And they're looking at one another, acknowledging that they're there, but not really interacting. I mean, Tita and Gertrudis interact 2 times in the movie. I mean, Rosaura and Tita interact like 2 times in the movie. It's infrequent enough that you can point at those moments and be like, these are the 2 scenes. These are the 2 scenes. And that's it. And it's like this movie, those characters deserved better because there were parts of this movie where, I mean, again, the Marco Leonardi character of the love interest of Pedro, the most thankless role in the entire movie.
But boy, ain't he pretty.
Yeah, that's it.
He is pretty.
Like, that's it.
Does he need to be more than that? Honestly, he just needs to be an object of desire.
I mean,
could have been more than that, but he's
all
not.
the characters could have been more.
Right.
I think we agree with that. Like their interactions are not enough. We don't really get to experience anyone's actual point of view. But that guy's pretty.
The point of view that we see is the great-granddaughter reminiscing on the great-aunt's life through the cookbook that she left. So it's kind of even meta then. I mean, it's meta to itself, right? Because
they should have ejected the grand niece and the cookbook and just told us the story. Get into it. Let Tina narrate it to us.
And here's the thing. I think that is where the novel is such a novel concept of how you're going to tell a story, right? Like to be like, I'm going to, it's a very grand tradition of literature is, let me tell you the story of my ancestors now that I have this, and I'm telling you this.
Yeah.
And you would make that character more in the television show. And there would be a reason why she had to tell the story now and had just found the cookbook or just rediscovered the cookbook or whatever. And, but the only person you actually get a lot from is Dr. John Brown.
The best character in the whole movie.
Because he explains what he wants. He and quite honestly, they almost ruin the movie for me.
Oh yeah, the exposition dump that he gives.
No, not the exposition, but the fact that you're like, dude, lady, he is a much better match for you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
he appreciates you. He when you said no to him, he walked away. But he will.
You didn't have a child with your sister?
He didn't have a child with your sister.
But it was just so I could get close to you. You don't understand. I just banged her because I had to. It wasn't because I wanted to.
I mean, like, come on.
Convenient, dude. Yeah. Like,
I got you these flowers, though.
It is shade. It is, speaking of things, it is a shades of Forrest Gump. Speaking literary, where it's like
really?
The pursued love, right? Because like he's the Jenny of the piece, right? Like she's chasing after him the whole movie, and he's like, I love you, and then at the end it's like, and then he just died, and then he just died.
Are we spoiling?
Yeah,
so they finally have sex.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they had sex before.
One time.
They finally have free to have sex and not
NSA
damage.
Sex, no strings attached.
No strings attached, and no one's around. They can be as loud as they want, and
hotel sex.
And he dies not like 10 minutes after they have sex, but literally on top of her. That would not make me burn.
I thought I was waiting for what term you were going to use. I hoped you were going to say mid-coitus. Yeah, I know, right?
That I wouldn't want to then just get up, cover him with the blanket that I spent the whole time making me, so I felt uncold, like not cold, and eat matches.
Boy, eating them. That's the thing. The movie wants to have its cake and eat it too, because then all of a sudden it's like magic realism. Everybody, she eats matches and explodes. Like, where was this for the last 30 minutes, movie?
But.
It's convenient when it's convenient when it's wrapping up the movie. Let's just put it that way.
Why didn't she make something that looked delicious with all of her grief and then consume it, and then that kills her?
Well, thank God.
We solved it. Get on the phone to 1992.
Again, it's almost like food wasn't the entire message of the movie, and there's a cookbook even that they find. Like, it's just the food becomes less of a part of the movie than it should. Like, the food should have been the vehicle, and we should have spent most of the time in the kitchen, and everything should have been going through that. And it's like, nope, just we want it to be important when it is important, but most of the time it's not. What the fuck?
Well, and I think again that is those are the things we know now that we have seen 10,000 movie adaptations of complex novels that seem on the surface simple. The novel is about both the food and this, how do you break tradition, and when tradition is abusive, right? And how do you both, live in these family structures that are food for you, that feed you, but also destroy you, right? And so those are these very subtle things that can be dropped in 3 lines in a novel, and so you can have that theme running through, and you can have this other theme running through, and you can have the food running through, but much, much harder to do in a movie, to sort of layer those themes together. And again, I think it was trying, but I don't know that there was here's the thing, for it to be a popular movie in the United States, I think it had to be...
Say it. Say it, Susan. I know you want to.
It had to be simpler storytelling than what you really would want at that time, when what you really would want out of the 2-hour version of this movie, maybe. Right. And again, I don't know that it satisfies everything, the 2-hour version, but I think it's that thing of like, okay, we're going to ask people to read subtitles. We're going to ask them to look at actors that they haven't known for 10 years. And don't worry, we're going to make the ladies nude whenever possible, and even when it's really not possible, and then or you don't think it would be. But I think it was a very palatable movie to bring to American audiences.
Yeah, and I think Chris, you keep talking about the magical realism, like they didn't push it. Like I think they were probably worried they were pushing it too much with all the rest they were asking of audiences to accept. All of the time jumps, all of this, the lack of a character interaction and stuff, and that we have to tell this entire story that takes place from birth to death. Like, that it's a balancing act, and I think they thought that one or another would tip it in the wrong direction.
That's why I mentioned Heavenly Creatures, because that's like
Miramax film Heavenly Creatures.
I know, but still, I mentioned that because it is still the best version of this kind of thing for me, of like a serious story that has a magical realism under kind of pinning to it. And again, the opening act of this movie, it was all there. I was, from the tears becoming salt and all that. It's like, it's setting the table. And then it just, instead of pulling the tablecloth off and everything's still standing, they pull the tablecloth and fucking the table comes with it. It just, I was shocked that they tried to pass off everybody at the end of the movie as the old versions of themselves. hey, this is supposed to be 20 years in the future. You're fucking bullshitting, right? They don't even look different.
What are you talking about? Marco Leonardi clearly had a gray mustache. He was an old man.
Oh,
they put some powder in that mustache.
I'm sorry. Lumi Cavazos looks the same. Mario Ivan Martinez.
Have you seen her lately? She looks the same.
Fair. But they couldn't have known that in 1992.
Yes, they could. You look at that face, she was never going to age. That she's just perfection.
Well, Mario Ivan Martinez, they don't even do anything. They don't even give him hair powder. It's just same guy.
And there's also the whose daughter got married, and why do we're at a wedding for someone we literally stopped seeing for a long time.
The last time we saw her, she was a baby, and then now she's an adult. It's like, whoa, movie, like chill the fuck. It's just, it's like the movie forgot 20 minutes. It's just fucking comes out of nowhere. And again, time jump of 20 years with nothing on screen saying 20 years later. Or it's okay, now they're getting married. What the fuck? Like,
can you get the 2-hour version of this movie?
I'm not sure it would help. I mean, again, this movie was well received. We're of the opinion here of certain things, but it's not like people didn't like this movie when it came out. Oh no,
people love this movie when it came out. This was very much, and it was lauded as a feminist piece. I wouldn't necessarily put it in that category now. It's a
at the time it was pretty bold and representative when most movies were not, though. So yeah.
Absolutely. And it's an empowerment piece. I wouldn't say it's a feminist piece, but it's definitely an empowerment piece, and still an empowerment story but also the cost of that, right?
Right.
The cost of that against a society that, or a patriarchal matriarch who wants to, that's the interesting thing, is it very much a toxic matriarch story, right?
Right. Which, I mean, again, like not getting
and the eldest daughter, by the way, who has inherited all of that horrible tradition. Like, I always thought, I mean, this is horrible plot wise, but she can't feed her child. Like, her child rejects her milk, which I thought was like, I don't know.
It's
then is her body rejecting the food too that's cooked with love because she's farting all the time? Like, I know that there's obviously like a gag in there of the farting in that one scene, but this is the kind of story and narrative that everything means something. And so I was trying to figure out what was the meaning of the indigestion, because she dies of acute indigestion.
Well, because she was so disgusted, because Tita was so disgusted by the idea that this tradition of destroying your youngest child or your only child to take care of you would be continued, and so that when she makes that food, it starts this process for her. What I don't like, and maybe I missed it, was there more to, because the sister comes in and asks for her help, and it feels like, oh, maybe there's going to be a resolution, like, oh, maybe we can, but it doesn't. No.
Well, the sister just dies farting in bed.
Yeah. Thought there was more character stuff that you missed. No.
Yeah. Again, like what's funny is you mentioned it, Susan. I think it's kind of the most apt thing. It's like we've gotten more complex with our storytelling. This movie ultimately feels kind of quaint in a way. Like okay, like yeah, this is the kind of movie that was made in the 90s, and it almost follows all the beats to the T of it has a shitty ending. It doesn't know how to end. And a lot of those indie movies in the 90s, at least like the good quote good ones, were like. The good ones knew how to end it. The middle of the road ones, like they had problems in the third act. And this movie is very indicative of that kind of problem of the indie movies having a great idea, but executing all the way through, maybe not. Not everything could be Pulp Fiction. As much as I don't want to say it, not everything can be Pulp Fiction. Another Miramax film.
But in the mind of a Miramax film in the 90s, we've had the people have the sex, and now we burn them up.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
They'll be naked and burning.
And it's about trying to get a movie made.
Yeah. And hey, you know what? I mean, ultimately, you can tell it's a foreign film from the 90s because they're showing Bush. I mean, again, that in and of itself was not a thing in American films. They weren't doing that. I mean, maybe more in the 90s than they were before, but also in our own country, like the kind of nudity that's okay per the MPAA's breasts. I guess, like, that's it. I mean, at least in the 90s, like...
Butts. You can show some butts.
some cheeks.
Everywhere else below the waist, do not show your viewers, god damn it.
Well, not like they couldn't just look down.
Well, hopefully not in the movie.
I mean, it depends. If you're seeing this
home,
movie...
maybe.
Who knows? I enjoy this movie as much as I could, but there are a lot of caveats, I think, in this day and age that it comes with. Unfortunately, it's not the movie's fault. Some of it is the movie's fault, but a lot of it is just existing at a time when a studio was buying and distributing movies. That is now kind of toxic to think about. Well,
and again, I think it comes with this layer of knowledge that you really can't completely set aside, particularly with the level of male gaze going on in this movie, even though it's written by a woman.
I liked it. It's good. It's got problems. It needs to be remade, but you're not wasting your time watching this movie. It could have been better, but it's really good.
I'm going to say it's very good. It is hard to look back on this given the Miramax information we know now, but I think it totally should be a limited series, and then you could really draw out that triangle love story, because I think Dr. John Brown, she should really have stayed with him because he loved her. The other guy, I'm really not sure that he loved her. He wanted to have sex with her.
She wanted to have sex with him, though, to be fair.
That is true. And they should have just had sex at the beginning of the movie, and then they could have gone on with their lives.
That's fair.
Go ahead.
And to be fair, Dr. John Brown knew about the other side, because he calls everything that she sees to the T, and he knows.
He's seen her. Yeah. He brought her back from the brink.
Yeah.
And I think he does. I literally think if you made this now, you would spend a little more time with that, with the, should she stay, or will she be pulled into this thing that will ultimately consume her?
Literally.
Call Netflix.
Only
Not
one
yet.
season. It's got to be one. That's fair.
Strike is out.
Yeah. No. My God.
And knowing Netflix, you could probably sell them on it, because they only want to do one season things anyways. So, just do one season and be done with it.
Think of the stars you could cast in this, and then you could bring back. Oh my God, you could bring her back to play mom.
Oh yeah, and you could actually have old people playing the old versions of the characters at the end, as opposed to young people fucking and then dying, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, no matter how many gray mustaches you give them. So,
oh my God, and now I've got to cast this thing. I'm really
he just drops dead, and we all go, I guess that makes sense because he looks like an old man. Sure, whatever, movie. So on that note, we'll take a break and we'll play a preview for the final movie for Spanish Language Film Month.
me apetece, me concentro, doy un paseo hasta el mar. Me voy volando. La vida para mí en este estado, la vida así no es digna. Tú estás ahí sentada, ¿no? A menos de 2 metros. Pues para mí, esos 2 metros es un viaje imposible. Ay.
De Ramos San Pedro, ¿verdad? Tenía yo ganas de llevarlo, hombre.
So on the final episode of Spanish Language Film Month, a month that went by way too fast, I will be joined by Richard's better half is here. So we'll be joined by Richard Hatem, 1/3 of the hosts of Rankin' on Bass, a show about ranking on bass, which like Water for Chocolate reminded me of, because at the beginning they go, hello, I bet you're wondering who I am. Let me tell you a story that it's like, what is this, ranking on bass all of a sudden? I was expecting, like, Smokey the Bear to walk in. I bet you're wondering who I am. Well, let me tell you a story about my aunt. It's like, what the fuck, movie? I don't know you. Get the onion off the top of your head. So we'll be joined by Richard Hatem to talk about The Sea Inside. Until then, Susan, where could people find you and your show, 80s TV Ladies?
Well, you can find us at 80stvladies.com, 80stvladies.com, or at 80s TV Ladies on all your social medias. You can find us on every platform for listening to podcasts. If you have a platform for listening to podcasts and we're not on it, reach out to me and we'll get on it at 80stvladies.com.
What about you, Father Malone?
Well, if you want to see any of the stupid visual stuff I do, go to fathermalone.com. You want to hear any of the audio stuff, that's all at weirdingwaymedia.com. Chris, you mentioned all my shows at the beginning. I'm not going to mention them again.
Yeah, and I'm not going to mention them again either, but I will mention
Dark Destinations. That's one. That's a good one.
That is a good one.
Dark Destinations by Father Malone.
And we're on Weirding Way Media too, like awesome network.
Yes. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
We all are. Every single one of us, it feels like. Yeah, I was going to mention the same thing. Weirdingwaymedia.com is where you can find all the things that I work on. Father Malone's stuff, Susan's podcast, all the good stuff that you should be checking out, weirdingwaymedia.com. As for this show, culturecast.com, patreon.com/culturecast, 3 different levels you can get in on: Completionist, Double Feature Guru, and Director's Chair. Completionist is all the bonus episodes that you're not going to hear anywhere else, like last month's One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest episode that you're literally not going to hear anywhere else. Double Feature Guru allows you to pick 2 movies a year that I have to watch, and if I like you, you get to pick the people that are on the episode if they want to show up, which, sometimes people are just like, fuck you, I don't want to talk about that movie, which has happened. So don't count your chickens before they hatch, Patreon, is what I'm saying.
Oh, no, count them.
Count them now. Chickens. And for $50, you can program an entire month worth of movies, including a Patreon bonus episode. So kind of like an Ouroboros thing going on. But that's where you can go, patreon.com/culturecast. As for everything else, Weirding Way Media, Susan, Father Malone, thank you guys both so much for joining me. I had a good time talking about this movie, even if it got real serious there for a while.
It was delightful.
It was not our fault that it got serious. The fucking movie made it serious.
Maybe it's serious, but it does make you hungry. I really wanted some mole.
Yeah, those enchiladas nogales at the end. Give me a little bit of that. Come on. God damn. Yep. But until then, we'll catch you on the next episode.